You want to talk first?
Sure.
Okay, talk first.
Alright, hi. My name is Megan and this is Melissa. We're both IAK dietitians with the Tulsa Health Department. It's all about kids programs. So tonight we're doing cutting the added sugar. So we have a live audience here, and then those on Facebook. When we're done with the demo, then the recipes will be printed. So we're going to be talking today about natural sugar versus added sugar, and we'll be showing you a couple recipes that tend to have a lot of added sugar in them, but we'll be showing you ways that you don't need to add very much added sugar in it, and we'll clarify what that means. So when we talk about added sugar versus natural sugar, a very basic definition is natural sugar is what's already naturally in our food. So for example, any kind of fruit, that's natural sugar, so it's just naturally sweet. Milk has natural sugar in it.
Grain products are going to have natural sugars, those carbohydrates. So those are all going to be natural sugars. So anything that's there when it is just as it is. Added sugars, on the other hand, are anytime you add anything to add sweetness to it. So that can be, white sugar, brown sugar, molasses, honey, agave. So a lot of people think, well, honey's not going to be an added sugar because it's a natural sugar. Well, if you're just eating honey by itself, yeah, it is what it is. But when you add it to something, it's going to act as that added sugar.
Yeah.
Even doing things like adding fruit juice to something to sweeten it, or adding applesauce to something to sweeten it, that then takes the role of that added sugar, particularly fruit juice. A lot of times you'll see things that are labeled no added sugar, but it's packaged in white grape juice. That white grape juice, according to the new packaging laws, that'll go 100% into effect in 2020 now. They keep pushing that date back. That fruit juice will count as added sugar, and they will mark that on the food label, which is important because the World Health Organization and the American Heart Association have determined what a safe level of added sugar is in a diet, because you're not going to avoid it 100% unless you cook everything that you eat, bake all of your own bread, have nothing that is processed, which you can do. You're more than welcome to do that. Most people are going to encounter added sugar in their lives, and you can safely do that. But you want to make sure that you stay underneath that safe limit, which for women is 24 grams or about 6 teaspoons. For men, they get 9 teaspoons because their metabolisms work a little bit differently than women's, and for children it's also the 6 teaspoons. So we have a couple of infographics, which this one from the American Heart Association we're going to post into the comments when we post the recipes as well. And you can just go to the American Heart Association website to see a lot of the information they have about added sugar, but it kind of breaks down where we find that added sugar and how to look for it. But we also have, when you're looking at your food label, and all of the people here in the kitchen have a copy of this food label, it's a bookmark, and you get to take home with you. And it has pointed out there, on the new food labels, there is a line for added sugars. And that way you can look at that, and if your budget is 24 grams a day, well, you know where to look. So if you're choosing to eat something that has added sugar in it, you can stay within that budget. And what we're doing today, the recipes, is going to help you with that. Granola is one that's particularly high in added sugar usually. They sweeten it a lot with a lot of different things. So the granola that we're making today, the only added sugar that's going into it is a little bit of maple syrup. So I'm going to go ahead and start that recipe and talk to you about how we put it together and the way that we did it. So usually when you make granola, you're going to have a couple of grains, a couple of nuts, some dried fruit to give you all of that yummy tastiness. I like granola by itself. I like it on yogurt.
Yeah.
I like it any way I can get it. I like it if you crush it into a bar form, but we're making loose granola that you can put on yogurt or on top of ice cream or on top of, some fruit if you want to, some sliced fruit. So what we're going to do for that is I'm going to put all my dry ingredients in a bowl. So I'm going to start with 3 cups of rolled oats. And these are not the quick cook oats. However, you could use those. It doesn't matter.
When I made it, I used it and it turned out fine.
Actually, No, these ones are the quick cook oats, the ones I bought, but these were already in the cabinet, so I used these first, you know, FIFO, first in, first out. You can use either, just make sure you use the rolled oats. If you use the, what's the word I'm thinking of that I can't think of right now? The other oats, the steel cut.
Oh, yeah, steel cut.
If you use steel cut oats, it's gonna be not a good texture.
No.
So now I'm going to put in some shredded coconut. And I'm gonna use unsweetened coconut. If you use the sweetened coconut, that's just gonna add some more added sugar to this recipe. And I bought the coconut that is, let me put some of this on my hand. I'm not sure if they can see it on the TV there, but it's the flakes. So it's not the shreds. I like this just because when I'm eating granola, I like to have more texture and I like to be able to taste all the things. And I find like the really fine shredded coconut, especially if you're gonna bake it, gets like lost. It goes away. So I'm gonna put in a cup of the coconut. And a little extra fills in. Hello, Lori. So one of our coworkers who's usually here with us tonight from our marketing department is at a conference right now for work, but she's in Orlando at a conference. So I'm so excited that she stopped at her conference this evening and watched us a little bit. So I put in my oats, I put in my coconut. I'm gonna put in a cup of walnuts. And really, you can do any nuts you like. I use walnuts a lot because they're pretty affordable. A lot of nuts tend to be really expensive. So, walnuts are pretty affordable. These, they're $6.99 a pound. And this bag was filled up all the way and it was just 1 pound. So that came to $7.48. So it's not terribly expensive considering that was probably 4 cups of walnuts that were in there, so.
And I had pecans in my house, so I just used those because that's what I had on hand and it worked. It worked too.
And then I'm also doing a cup of slivered almonds. You could do whole almonds in it if you wanted to, but I like the variation in texture, like the big walnuts to the slivered almonds.
And it kind of browns nice.
Yeah. And again, they're pretty affordable. They're not a super expensive nut. We got these in the bulk section at Reeser's. Notice they were $8.09 a pound, but I filled this bag up to here, and it was a half pound. So it only came to $5.42. And again, I've made 2 batches of this earlier today, and there's still probably a cup left. So again, that was about 4 cups of nuts in there. So you could make this recipe 4 times with that. So I've got those in there. Sorry.
Okay.
And I'm just gonna stir that up a little bit. And our oven is already preheated to 250. You want a pretty low oven. You don't want to scorch any of the nuts or the coconut, but you also want to make sure that you get enough heat that you can toast them. So then I'm gonna make what's gonna turn this into granola. So I'm gonna take a 1/4 cup of maple syrup. So that's gonna be the majority of our added sugar right there. But it's also gonna add flavor. And that's why I chose to use maple syrup in this and not, make a simple syrup or not use, you could use honey as well. It's gonna change the flavor a little bit, but I like the maple syrup. And then, talking about flavor, I'm gonna add a 1/4 cup of vanilla extract, which you're not gonna taste so much as you're gonna smell. And we know that when we're eating, a lot of what we think of as taste is actually smell. So think about if you have a cold and you taste something, it doesn't taste as good. You can't get all of the flavor because a lot of the flavor that we encounter is actually in our olfactory glands in our nose. So it's kind of like how you can say, oh, this tastes like grass. You've never actually eaten grass, but you know what grass smells like, so you can assume that's what it would taste like. So I've got my maple syrup, I've got my vanilla, and I put quite a bit of vanilla in there because I really want to get that aroma. I'm gonna take 2 tablespoons of canola oil. You could use any vegetable oil that's sort of mild. I wouldn't use an olive oil or anything that has a pronounced flavor. So I went with canola because it's pretty non-flavor. And I'm gonna take, salt. Can you go grab
Yeah.
the salt? And a teaspoon. I thought I was so well prepared. I forgot my salt. Okay. So then I am gonna add just under a teaspoon of salt. The recipe, when I wrote it, I did half a teaspoon, and I decided that wasn't quite enough. So I'm gonna do just under a full teaspoon. Now I'm adding salt to it because when you add salt to things that are supposed to be sweet, it increases that sweetness. Think about, does anybody here ever put salt on their grapefruit? Or salt their melons? Yeah, salt their melon. So it's the same idea. So you're using that salt to really enhance the flavor that's already there. So I'm gonna stir that up. And I'm going to pour that onto, and make sure that you get all of the salt that might have stuck to the sides. And then, now typically I don't wear gloves in my kitchen unless I have a cut on my hand, because your own kitchen, clean hands. But this has syrup in it, and I don't like the texture on my hands, but the best way to get it really in there is to mix it with your hands. So if you don't mind the texture, just using clean hands is totally fine, but I didn't like it. So I'm just gonna put some gloves on, and you really wanna make sure that every little last oat gets, thank you. It's like you read my mind, Megan.
I know, I knew where you're going next.
You wanna make sure every little last oat gets covered. Because then when it's in the oven, it'll toast up. So once that's on there, you're gonna take about half of it and put it onto a baking sheet. You wanna make sure you're using a rimmed baking sheet, because you're gonna do this for about an hour and 15 minutes, and you're gonna shake it around and toss it every 15 minutes, so you wanna make sure that it's not gonna fall off the sides. But I use 2 because I wanna make sure that it's totally flat and not all, like it's not mounded up, so a lot of it will get that direct heat. So those are gonna go into a 250-degree oven for an hour and 15 minutes, and every 15 minutes you're gonna go in and just take a spatula and shake it around, mix it up so it gets, you can even just shake it like that. Put those in. And I like to also, when I go in to shake it up every 15 minutes, I move the bottom to the top and the top to the bottom, so that way they get browned more evenly.
And how Melissa did it is having 2 timers, so you can have like a timer on your phone, or if you have a timer on your microwave, set that for an hour 15, and then do it every 15 minutes on a different timer, because you will likely lose track.
Yes, I set 2 timers. So this is after it's been baked off. You see that coconut's gotten nice and toasty. So after it's been baked off and cooled completely, you're going to transfer it into a bowl. And not spill it all over the floor like I did earlier today. We admit our mistakes here. We're not perfect. And then we're gonna add the dried fruit. Yes, please. Now, when I wrote this recipe, I do try and think of the cost of the ingredients when we're putting them in. I love dried cherries. They are very expensive. So if you wanted to do this recipe with dried cranberries or raisins or any other dried fruit that you like, that's fine. I really love dried cherries, so I splurged on this one. But it would taste very good with any dried fruit that you enjoy. And these are a little bit sweetened, so there is some added sugar from the cherries as well. And craisins or dried cranberries, if you use those are sweetened as well. They have added sugar. Raisins do not. So raisins as a fruit do not have any sugar added to them. So then you can just mix that up, and you're gonna put it into an airtight container, and you can keep it for up to a month, if it lasts that long, which it won't, because I ate it every single night on yogurt for dessert, and it made me really happy. So everyone here will get to taste that, but that is our granola.
Okay, so now we're going to do the berry yogurt pops. And so you'll notice on your recipe that it was written as Greek yogurt, but we got plain yogurt at the store. And so it's just gonna have less protein in it, so the protein amount is gonna be a little bit different. The importance of it is grabbing plain yogurt. A lot of the yogurts are sweetened with added sugar in that as well, but we're gonna show you a way to even make popsicles without added sugar.
And then the other reason why we went with the traditional yogurt, not the Greek yogurt, is we could find the plain Greek non-fat yogurt, but we're freezing these and we want these to be like a creamy, delicious treat. And non-fat yogurt that's plain is not a creamy, delicious treat. Getting the whole milk yogurt is gonna add that, that mouthfeel. It's gonna add to that satiety level, which means it's gonna keep you full a little bit longer. It's also gonna taste better. So we decided, go for the full fat, but not the Greek, and it'll still freeze up just fine. It just won't have quite as much protein, which, I mean, it'll still have protein in it. It's a dairy product.
Exactly. And we teach the kids, we do ice cream with the kids, and so we talk about the crystals and the, like Melissa was just saying, the mouthfeel. So if you kind of think about low-fat ice cream versus high-fat ice cream, when you eat them side by side, you can really taste a difference in how much more satisfying.
So if you're making, I mean, these are gonna be 6-ounce popsicles, so the amount of saturated fat that you're getting from that, I'd rather get the saturated fat, which you need fat in your diet. It's important for you to get those fat-soluble vitamins. It's important for your hair and your skin. But it also, food should taste good. If you're eating something because you think it's better for you and it doesn't taste good, then find something that does.
And
I know, that's me.
Well, and you'll likely be satisfied off one popsicle.
Instead of continuing to eat them and then being like, well, now I've got to go get ice cream because this just didn't meet that sweet tooth I had.
Yes. Okay, so we're doing 1.5 cups of yogurt. And again, making sure it's plain because the vanilla will be white too, and sometimes it's like hard to realize that you grabbed the vanilla.
But that'll have quite a bit more added sugar, and
Yes.
that's the point. We're trying to make this with the least amount of added sugar as possible.
So I've got my 1.5 cups in the blender, and then we're doing 2 cups of frozen fruit. So you can do any kind of frozen fruit that you like. Just make sure again that it doesn't have the added sugar, because sometimes there's syrup in there and you'll see added sugar. But you could do a tropical blend. You could do just cherries, just blueberries, just blackberries, whatever you like. But we wanted to get the berry blend, so we're gonna do 2 cups of that. And then I'm gonna blend this up. It's gonna be loud. I had to blend it quite a bit when I was making the ones earlier, so it kind of depends on your texture. Like if you want a little bit more texture there, you don't have to blend it up quite as long, but I had to blend it probably well over a minute in total. Okay, so that looks pretty good. So you'll notice there's still a little bit of texture in there. It's not,
Completely pureed, but if
Yes.
you wanted it to be,
Pureed.
you could. And then I'm going to take
So she's doing it in Dixie cups. If you've got little homemade, not homemade. If
The
you've
little
got
popsicle
little plastic
holders?
popsicles, which you can get at
I mean, they sell them at Reese's, they sell them at
Yeah.
Walmart, they sell them at Target.
So I'm gonna show you one other one that we don't have a recipe written for, and then you'll just stick popsicle sticks in the top. We are gonna do banana and yogurt, and then put vanilla wafers on top. So these are gonna have added sugar in there as well. And the cool thing on this nutrition label, they have already moved over to including the tin, showing how much of included sugars, added sugar there are. So on here it's 10 grams for a serving. So just keeping that in mind if you're gonna be adding vanilla wafers. So again, I'm just gonna do 1.5 cups of yogurt to 1 banana. You can freeze the banana before, but it's really not necessary because when you put it in there, when you put it in the molds, they're gonna freeze up anyways.
But I would make sure that when you're buying your bananas to use for this, or when you are using the banana, use a ripe banana. So you want it to have those brown spots on it, because it's gonna be sweeter, it's gonna have more of that banana flavor, and really, the texture, it's gonna freeze up regardless. So using a ripe banana is going to give you a lot more of those natural sugars, because as it ripens, it produces more natural sugars. Which is something we try and teach the kids in cooking club as well, because they think if there's any brown spot on a banana, you can't eat it.
Yes, they won't touch it.
They won't they want it basically green.
Here's our banana.
Which doesn't taste like a banana and has a totally different texture too. So getting them to eat ripe bananas is, although if you let your bananas go too far, then you can always make banana bread, and that's
That
always
makes
good
the
too.
best banana bread. Alright, so won't take very long to blend up.
Did you put the vanilla in?
No, I forgot about vanilla. Thank you.
And again, this isn't gonna add a lot, we're gonna add some vanilla to this. It's not gonna add a lot of flavor, but it's gonna add an aroma. It's gonna smell like vanilla as you're eating it, and that's gonna enhance how you perceive the flavor.
So I just did 1/2 teaspoon. So again, it's 1 banana to 1.5 cups of the yogurt. You can always add more if you want a real banana flavor, and then 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract.
I do that, she's going to crush up our little Nilla wafer topping. Because if the banana wasn't frozen, you'll see it is much thinner. I can actually pour it.
Makes it easier. So I just put, I think this was 1.5 servings of the Nilla wafers in there. And then I'm just gonna use my yogurt container and crush them up. Put them in a Ziploc bag and crush them. You can get them really, really fine. It just depends on the texture that you want it.
And this banana might have been a little bit smaller because we only got 5 out of it, but that's okay. Bananas vary in size.
That is true. So smash those up, then add that on top. Just to kind of cover it, what'd you say, 1/2 inch?
Yeah. Just the right amount, Megan.
I know, that was perfect.
For a recipe we made it while we were at the grocery store yesterday.
Yes.
We just wanted to show a variation, so while we were shopping, we're like, what else could we do to make the popsicle and not just do a berry one, so.
And you know me with chocolate, you could always add unsweetened cocoa powder too.
You could have. Or you could do peanut butter and banana.
Ooh,
That would be really good. I just thought about that. Why don't we do that?
I know, I did.
We have peanut butter.
Well, and peanut butter is another thing to look for with added sugar. 'Cause
Yes.
that can creep up on you as well. Speaking
Especially
of
if you're buying the reduced fat peanut butters, those they do add sugar to. So when you're buying your peanut butter, look for ones where the only ingredients are peanuts or maybe peanuts and salt.
Mm-hmm.
But
When I first started working here, Melissa told me about the Smuckers, and I was like, what? So
it's my favorite peanut butter.
my husband and I started buying it, and we love it. You just have to really blend it with a knife in the beginning, but this has no added sugar to
Which
it.
kind is it?
Smuckers.
Smuckers.
Love it. You can get it at Walmart. But yeah, you'll see at the top there's a lot of oil.
So you just have to stir it up and then keep it in the fridge. Okay, so then it's frozen and these have been in there all day.
I should have squished it in there.
Oh, that's okay.
I didn't really smush it in there, so it's gonna be a little bit more loose, the vanilla wafers are, because I didn't really get it into the liquid.
But then treat it just like push pop, but reversed. You can.
And with the granola that Melissa made, you could always put that at the bottom of these.
Mhm. And there you've got your little yogurt popsicle, which I think looks pretty good. So those are our super easy recipes to reduce your added sugar that we have for you tonight. If you're in the room, you get to taste all of them. If you're not in the room and you're on Facebook, I hope you enjoy this. The recipes will be posted in the comments, and then you can make them at home. Please feel free to comment once you've made them and let us know what you think. Our next cooking demo,
August 8th, it's gonna be cooking with your school-age children, so we have a really, really fun recipe.
we're gonna talk about getting your kids involved in the kitchen and what age-appropriate tasks they have to do, and we're gonna make pizza.
Alright.
Making pizza. So we will see you then. Hope you have a good night. Bye.